真欢喜，今仔日伫网络顶头呢，咱要开始咱的会议会当看到大家真欢喜。即个今仔日的即个讨论是2点钟的讨论，是关于
Excuse me, where's the washroom?
Right around there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You can turn off your video. You can mute it if you not talking. Yeah. Thank you. 咱今仔日的题目是迄个家暴中心的关怀有2点钟的讨论。这个组织呢是咱要知影伊的中心的组织是对社会有啥物款的服务咱会当甲因支持甲关怀这咱的妇女会嘛几落年拢有伫关心即个议题对咱南加州会当讲是真好的一个关怀的组织咱嘛真欢喜即个今仔日的咱的迄个会议是由咱的 Cissy Chen 呢，伊旧年嘛是迄个组织的负责人，伊足有经验的嘛办了真好。咱今年所以咱就搁请伊甲咱办真多谢伊用足侪时间的联络大家啦安尼。搁咱的迄个 flyer 啦甲一个真侪迄个通知嘛真多谢文静甲咱做真好的 flyer 那因为搁伊迄个文静呢挥挥手文静今仔日是要甲咱迄个伊做迄个panel controller 所以恁大家会讲我有啥物问题会当甲伊沟通一下我安尼介绍者，咱甲时间呢交互搁我想要甲讲者，就是讲这家暴中心的组织呢咱今仔日要介绍的是2个，一个是亚太家庭中心，甲一个是好牧者中心咱嘛会当讲有 donation 你若有买 donation 的时阵，咱 email 顶头有讲，那你会当看我将以下的时间交互咱的主持人 Cissy Chen。
大家好，各位NATWA的姊妹，大家好，我叫做陈世基我英文名叫做 Cissy， 我是NATWA南加州的迄个理事今年呢，我负责呢10月份家暴的即个讨论。今仔日呢，咱是要讨论包括家暴、无厝通转去，甲父母囡仔沟通的即寡问题即寡问题呢，影响的毋是干那咱家庭伊嘛是会变做一种社会真大的一个问题若是有人拄到即寡问题呢，今仔日咱就有即个机会来教因讲安怎得到即方面的帮助今仔日呢，咱请到3位专家来甲咱讨论即方面的代志因为即3位专家有诶袂晓听台语所以等下我会用中文还是英文来甲因介绍。咱的第一位讲员是钟玲武我即马用中文来甲介绍我们第一位讲员呢是亚太家庭中心的钟玲武，他的中文名字呢叫做吴钟玲。钟玲的父母是来自台湾，他是我们台湾来的第2代移民，他也会讲中文。钟玲呢，在 UCLA 拿到心理学的学士，也是 USC 社会工作的硕士。他目前呢，在亚太家庭中心做社区服务的经理。今天他的讲题包括亚太家庭中心如何依靠社区来寻求需要帮助的家暴受害人。 亚太家庭中心呢会保护受害人的隐私，并提供热线服务、个人和团体辅导，以及安全和法律的咨询，来帮助受害人回归社会。亚太家庭中心的社工可以讲30种亚太语言，所以现在呢，我们就请钟令物上场。好，钟令，
嗨，Jolly，
嗨，
Hello, hi, 大家好. Thank you
好，
for your introduction. 各位好，那我叫仲宁，是从亚太家庭中心。Yeah, thank you, Cissy, for your introduction, and NATWA for having me here. 那我今天是用中文、英文讲一点。那因为我们几位就是为了大家可以互相大家都听得懂，那我也大部分是用英文来谈。So today I will be sharing more about what my agency does at Center for the Pacific Asian Family. We are a culturally specific dual domestic violence and sexual assault agency. So for a moment, I do have the slides, may pull these up. So are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we do have a 24-hour multilingual hotline. That's our 1-800 number right there. This is a 24-hour hotline, so anyone can call us. We have people who answer the hotline who speak various languages. We can also use phone interpreters as needed, so all of the languages can be covered. I'm also including our website, nurturingchange.org, and there are 2 social media handles. One is CPAF.org, that is CPAF's main page on Facebook and Instagram. We also have Violence Free CPAF. This is an Instagram account that's more specific to our youth programming. So youth leadership and information about healthy boundaries and consent. And so this is a project of our prevention team, and they do a lot of work with middle school and high school age youth to talk about healthy relationships and building stronger, healthier families and communities. And quickly, Center for the Pacific Asian Family was founded to support Asian families. There were no resources for families in Asian languages in Los Angeles at the time. So we were founded by a Filipina woman who created the first volunteer-run hotline that was available for families of Asian and Pacific Islander descent. So we provide immediate support over hotline. We do have an emergency shelter and 2 transitional shelters for families who are fleeing violence in the home. We also have a public community center. And pre-COVID, people would often walk in or make appointments in person to meet with somebody at the community center. Currently, much of our services are remote, and this has continued. Even as we've opened up in-person services, many people have preferred to remain remote because of transportation. Traffic in Los Angeles is not great. And many people who are connected to CPAF don't find us because they're close to our office, but because they have the language need. And so of the people calling our hotline, many people are within LA County. We also have folks calling us from outside the county in other parts of California, sometimes out of the state. We've also gotten a handful of calls from people who are out of the country. And this speaks to how far some people need to search to find a domestic violence advocate who can talk to them in Mandarin, who can provide services in a language that's more familiar to them. So when we talk about domestic violence, this is an image that often comes up. This is called the power and control wheel. So we're talking about a pattern of control over one person. So one person in this relationship has more power than the other person, and they're using it to control and isolate. And this is, sorry about that. So the power and control wheel, you see the inner wheel, and this goes into some of the different types of violence and abuse that somebody might use over their partner. And this could include emotional abuse, using threats. We serve many immigrant survivors of domestic violence, and so threatening somebody's immigration status, right? If you don't do as I say, I won't cooperate with the immigration petition, right? I'm going to withdraw the petition, or hiding somebody's passport and documents, using finances to control somebody, or threatening to take the children away. These are all different ways of power and control over. Sometimes we think of domestic violence as only physical violence, and there are many other ways to exert that power and control over somebody else. And I use this wheel because it's not just the interpersonal conflict and control. See, there's the inside wheel, and then also the two rings outside. And so all of us are also influenced by our culture, right? Our cultural heritage and backgrounds. What did we learn about family and relationships growing up? What did we learn about dating and the role of men and women in relationships? So what did we learn about marriage? And who do we go to when there are problems in the home? Do we talk about it? In many Mandarin-speaking families, something we hear is 家丑不可外扬, and this is something we see in many cultures. There's some version of don't air your dirty laundry. If there are problems in the home, don't talk about it to other people. That's embarrassing. And domestic violence is something that thrives in silence. When we don't talk about it, when the people who are hurting others in the household feel like they can get away with it, nobody's going to stop them. That's how it can keep going. So this is another pattern we often see. This is called the cycle of violence. And it's easy to ask when we hear about somebody who's in an abusive relationship, why didn't they just leave? Why not just go? And it's not that simple. If it were an easy decision, they would have left already. And what we often see is that there is a cycle of ups and downs. And sometimes the relationship is okay. Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes my partner is very nice and loving, and everything is great. And then there are times when it starts to get a bit tense, right? They're moody. I have to be really careful about what I'm saying around this person because they might get angry. And then there is an incident, a blowout, a fight, incident of violence. And when that happens, maybe there's a period of time where everything's really good again. Right? My partner is saying they're really sorry. I'll go to counseling. I'll change. I'm not going to do that again. And so for somebody who is in this cycle of ups and downs, maybe I can give them another chance, right? Maybe they can change, or maybe they mean it this time. And so this can be hard to understand from the outside because we hear about one incident of violence and that sounds like it's too much already. Just get out of there. For a survivor who, there was one really scary thing that happened last month, and the other 30 days were fine. Right? And this isn't just a random person. This is my partner. We got married and we planned a life together. We have children together. It's not so easy to just pick up and leave. And it's common for people to leave and come back multiple times before they leave for good, before they come to a decision of what they want to do. Okay. And so here are some statistics that have been gathered, and this is across general population, of lifetime prevalence of domestic violence and sexual assault. Many studies suggest that about 1 in 4 women over the course of their lifetime will experience domestic violence or sexual assault. About 1 in 7 men will experience severe physical violence by a partner. And so domestic violence is an issue that affects all genders, across all cultures. And we often will see an intergenerational cycle of violence down through generations of families. I remember talking to one woman who was in our shelter because of domestic violence, and she talked about how her parents had fought. She grew up watching her dad hit her mom. And so when she became an adult and she met her husband, and her husband was, acting in some ways that were threatening, abusive, she said, I didn't have an alarm in my head that I think other people might have, but I grew up with it, so it felt normal to me. It didn't set off the alarm for me that other people might have seen the signs and thought it was really strange or really dangerous and gotten out earlier. So sometimes we end up replicating a family dynamic, not because we want to, but we've never seen an alternative. And this is how the adults around me resolved conflict. This is how adults around me won an argument. Whoever yelled louder, whoever hit first, they were the ones who won. So again, these are some statistics that relate to the general population. Studies that are more specific to Asian communities are very limited. In earlier studies, all Asian Pacific Islander communities were lumped together into one category. So the data is all mixed together. And a lot of these very broad studies, maybe they were only facilitated in English. And so because of the lack of language access, Asian families, Asian communities were also underrepresented. There are some studies, smaller studies, that do look at specific Asian communities. The data is still limited. This is one example of a phone interview. And this took place in Los Angeles County. And there's a study, a survey that was shared among people who identified as ethnic Chinese. And so this is based off of ethnicity and not nationality. I don't know if we have further information of the countries of origin, that this was a combination of both immigrant and second generation American families in LA County. And what we're seeing is the rates of domestic violence are similar to what we're seeing in the general population. It's worth pointing out in the study, 18% of respondents reported minor physical violence. Again, there are many forms of violence that are not physical. Another interesting point is that the more acculturated respondents were twice as likely to report partner violence. More acculturated meaning more Americanized, higher English speaking proficiency, more Americanized overall. And a higher rate of reporting doesn't mean a higher prevalence of violence. We might be seeing a higher likelihood to make a report. We know that many people who experience violence choose to not call the police, right? And for a number of reasons. It may be difficult to report, fear of not being able to communicate clearly, just the fear of having any sort of police or court involvement can bar a lot of people from speaking up, and just thinking, I didn't think the police would believe me. I didn't know this was against the law. Depending on country of origin, there may not be domestic violence laws on the books, or they may not be consistently enforced. And so education is a big part of what we do over the hotline, in things like letting people know that they have options where, regardless of your immigration status, right, you can call the police if you feel like you're in danger. The local police who show up, they're not asking about your immigration status. And for people who are choosing to not call the police, how else can we support you? We can offer counseling. We can talk through what makes sense for you to feel safer when you're at home. If you're looking to leave the home safely, we can make a plan for that. And so I want to go back again to this wheel for a moment and thinking about the individual, the schools, the families and neighborhoods we grew up within, our larger culture, and what we've learned about relationships and problem solving and how we ask for help. You know, about how all of these influence our decisions on just why we make some of the decisions we do, who we talk to when we're looking for support from someone else. You know, and with all of this in mind, I'd like to share the story of Miss Chen. And Miss Chen is not a single person. She is a combination of many, many stories of people who have come through CPAF services, who've shared, you know, a little bit of their journey with us. You know, and so Miss Chen is somebody who met her husband when she was still living in Taiwan. You know, he was already living and working in the US, was a bit more established. So the plan was, we'll get married, I'll bring you back to the US, I'll introduce you to all of my friends, right? They're gonna love you. We'll get you set up with English classes, right? I'll support you so you don't have to worry about anything. Just, you know, come over and I'll take care of you. And so she moved out of the country. She sold her home. She left her job. She left her career in Taiwan. All of her friends and family were in Taiwan. And so she was ready to start over. The one person she knew in the US at this point was her husband. And once she arrived in the US, everything changed. And it started as more protection, right? A protectiveness of, it's really dangerous outside, so don't go out by yourself, right? You don't need to get a driver's license. If you need to go somewhere, I'll take you. Right? You don't have to worry about getting a job. I'll support you. When they first met, her now parents-in-law had welcomed her, and they also gave her a warning of, you know, our son, he's a good boy, and sometimes he has a temper, right? So just something to be aware of. When he gets that certain look in his eyes, just leave him alone, right? Just be careful what you say, otherwise you might set him off. And the abuse started as something that was more subtle, more indirect threats, where, you know, if you were to tell anybody what's going on, like, well, first of all, they couldn't understand you because you don't speak English. Your English sucks. So you can call the police, but the police won't believe you, right? Because you're not from around here. And even if you were to try to dial the phone, like, what is the number for emergency services? That number is different in different countries. So, you know, how would you even know where to go, what to do? If you don't listen to me, then I will withdraw your immigration petition. And over the past few years, we've seen a spike of an escalation, right, in anti-Asian hate violence. And this was another form of leverage and threat of, you can't go out and tell anybody because you're Asian. People will just attack you. You can't go to anyone for help. Or these social service agencies, they won't help you either. Or if you do want to go back to Taiwan, well, everyone there already knows that you came here to start a new life in America, right? You got married and then you came over here for the good life in America. If you go back now, they'll know you failed. So Ms. Chen got connected to a local church. Right? She went to the church and talked to her pastor. Right? This is someone who sounds really supportive and helpful, and maybe the pastor can offer some help. And so she shared to the pastor about the difficulties with her husband and not feeling really safe. And can you please talk to him? Can you tell him that this isn't okay? And the pastor's response was, your husband didn't come to me directly, right? So I can't talk to him. I can't bring this up to him uninvited because that would be embarrassing for him. It would be embarrassing for your husband as the head of household. So if he comes to me, then we can talk. I can support him. But right now, I can't just go and talk to him. She talked to a neighbor about what was happening at home. And if you hear something, I hope if you hear a fight, if you hear like I might be in danger, could you call the police for me? Right? And the neighbor said, I can't get involved. I don't want to get involved with the court. I can't get involved with any of this. I'm staying out. Right? And even the thought of calling the police, right? The idea of police cars pulling up outside where all the neighbors are going to see. It's a lot, even in thinking about how much help she might need in the moment, or what do I do if I'm feeling really unsafe at home? Calling the police and having police cars pull up with the sirens and the lights, and just everyone on this whole block is going to know that something happened. And then what? How can I face anybody after that? So again, Ms. Chen is not a single person. She is someone who reflects the many barriers and challenges that are faced by survivors as they are trying to figure out what works best for them. And at CPAF, in the work that we do, it's an individual conversation every time. We can offer options, we can offer support, and there's a level of expertise we might bring in as somebody who has a level of familiarity with how systems work. If you choose to call the police, if you choose to file the restraining order, this is what the process looks like. But I can't tell you, here's what you need to do, because I'm not the one who can decide that. My job as an advocate is to support the survivor in making the best decision for themselves. What information can I provide to you so you can make an informed decision about what works best for you and for your family? Right? I can share what other people have found helpful. How does any of these options sound to you? And so in supporting survivors, the first step is to listen without judgment, without blaming or shaming them for what happened. I'm here to listen. It makes sense that you feel the way that you do. What can I do? How can I help you feel safer at home? How can I make you feel safer if something happens that makes you start to feel unsafe? We don't want to make assumptions about what is best for this person. And it may take a while for somebody to decide what they want to do. And again, that makes a lot of sense. You can always call our hotline back, right? You have a bit more information to think about. If you have any further questions, if you would like to start counseling, if you would like more information about shelter, you can always give us a call back. And sometimes we're watching and supporting somebody make a decision that we may not agree with, or we may have other concerns about. And we want to respect every person's self-determination. We want to respect their independence and ability to make those decisions for themselves. And if you would like support, if you would like to talk to somebody, if you would like any more information about some of the services we've described, we're here, right? That door is always open. And so Ms. Chen didn't know that there were domestic violence shelters in the US. She didn't know that there were agencies that were more specialized to support people who were experiencing violence in the home. The first person Ms. Chen saw was her doctor. And during a routine doctor's appointment, the doctor was also asking some questions about domestic violence. And to ask directly, have you experienced domestic violence? Do you have any questions or concerns? No, I don't. Like violence, there's no problem like that at home. But on asking some more specific questions of, has your husband ever made you feel like you had to be really careful about what you said? Otherwise there would be further trouble, or things might get kind of scary, right? Has your husband ever controlled your finances or confiscated or hidden important legal documents? Right? Has your husband ever said things to put you down, maybe either in an argument or in front of other people? Has he ever used the immigration process, right, as leverage to make you do something or else? And in asking some of those more specific questions, it became easier to more clearly identify the situation for what it was. In thinking about domestic violence, I thought this was just one spouse hitting another spouse. And learning more about what we consider to be different forms of power and control over, it became clear that this was an abusive dynamic. This was domestic violence. These are all different forms of unhealthy power and control over another person. And so through her doctor, Ms. Chen received some more information about other services in the agency. Here's a hotline that you can call when you feel ready. And this is the importance of working in community, because quite often a domestic violence survivor will not right away find the domestic violence agency. Many of the connections that are made, the people who are eventually connected to CPAF hotline and services, they're introduced by another service provider. And this could be through a medical doctor, a teacher, a lawyer. And as they are looking for these other services in the community, they're talking to someone who says, would you be interested in speaking to a DV advocate about this? From what you're describing about your relationship, I have some concerns, and I'd like to introduce you to one of our colleagues in the community. And so these collaborative partnerships are so important to expand our reach, to support others in the community, to connect people to services as smoothly as possible. And we also provide trainings to other community partners, because CPAF is not everywhere at once. We rely on the community. We can provide some immediate safety in our shelters, in our community center, and the long-term goal is to connect people back to their communities, to build communities and support networks of people who are healthy, safe, who are nonviolent, and are together in building out that stronger community of support for everyone. And this requires all of the services. CPAF doesn't have in-house legal services. So everything that we do in our legal advocacy is through connections to our partner agencies. We can help introduce any CPAF clients to legal aid organizations, because that's not something we provide ourselves. We have an emergency shelter and transitional shelters, and we work with other agencies that provide transitional and permanent housing, for that long-term care and support. We also provide trainings to other agency staff on how can we better support recent immigrant survivors, limited English speaking. What are ways that we can address domestic violence and sexual assault in API communities? And we know that people who are marginalized in multiple ways are the most at risk. So we do provide services in various Asian languages, and for people who are also undocumented, also limited English speaking, also queer, trans, living with a disability, neurodivergent, the challenges compound, and it's so important for us to work across different sectors. And so today I'm very happy to be joined by two other speakers who'll be sharing more about mental health advocacy and homeless and housing services, because we need everyone, right? CPAF provides services in a certain scope, and there's not enough shelter space for everyone who needs it. Housing is scarce. It's affordable housing, I should say, is very scarce in Los Angeles. And so what are the other resources that can help towards rental assistance, towards helping families achieve greater financial stability, so that when they do leave our shelter, they're more prepared for independent living. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone a bit better. I also wanted to pause to see if anyone had questions.
兄弟，也许我们把这个 sharing question and answer 等到最后好了，好吗？
Okay.
可以，好，谢谢。好，我们谢谢钟令很精彩的演讲哈。我们今天从钟令的演讲学到了很多这个 domestic violence 的知识哈，非常的谢谢他。那我们第二位讲员是 Good Shepherd Center 的 Alex Batik。因为 Alex 他不懂中文，所以我会用英文来介绍他。Our second speaker is Alex Batik from Good Shepherd Center. Alex's mother came from Taiwan, and he grew up in Southern California. Alex is a very dedicated young man who enjoys working in the social service field. He is the manager of Housing for Health program for Good Shepherd Center and is in charge of evaluating and helping homeless women and children. He arranges lodging for them and help them see doctor and therapy if they need it. Alex will talk about Good Shepherd Center's mission to provide shelter to homeless women and children. He will also describe the causes of homelessness, such as domestic violence, lack of family support, drug abuse, and mental health, etc., and what Good Shepherd Center does to help these women and children. So here is Alex Batik.
Thank you, Cissy. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'm a program manager at Good Shepherd Center for Homeless Women and Children. Before starting at Good Shepherd Center, I've been there for 4 years now, but before that, I was working at Downtown Women's Center, which is another homeless services organization in Skid Row. So I was also there for 4 years. And what got me into the social services field is that I wanted to help people that were in a tough situation, help them get back on their feet. And it just so happened I was at Cal State LA studying sociology, and then I got the opportunity to do an internship at Downtown Women's Center, and that was working with people experiencing homelessness in Skid Row, women. So that led me to work at Good Shepherd Center eventually. And I just enjoyed doing the work of case management, helping people from moving on the street into a shelter and then into their own apartment eventually, helping them stabilize their health, their housing, just overall their well-being. And that was really rewarding for me. So that's the field I'm still in currently. And I enjoy the work. So I'm glad to be able to help people the best way that I can and to keep improving. Because we see in Los Angeles, there's a lot of people living on the street, and we have a bad situation with homelessness. And we don't know how to solve the problem, or it seems like the solution is not, it's not being implemented. So that's why I want to work in this field, because I feel that there is a big need for services and to help us, because I think we need something to change, and a lot of people are upset, and they have the right to be to feel unsafe. Sometimes they don't feel comfortable walking down the street. They see a lot of tents. So there's a better solution, I think, and that's what I'm trying to do working at Good Shepherd Center. And I'm gonna share the screen. So Good Shepherd Center for Homeless Women and Children, it was founded in 1984, and we're a program of Catholic Charities of Los Angeles. We provide services to people regardless of their religion, gender, race, regardless of any type of status. So we're open to all people that are women and children. So we have 2 shelters for single women, 1 transitional housing residence for women with 1 or 2 children. So overall, we have three separate locations, but they're all in the same area of historic Filipino town, which is near downtown LA. And we serve a diverse ethnic backgrounds. The majority is Latina, Black, and white, but we have some Asian and Pacific Islander clients as well. They all have different backgrounds. Some of the people we serve have bachelor's degrees, even master's degrees. Others, they didn't finish high school. It's a wide array of people that you'll meet. Some have had a lot of money in their lifetime, and then now they don't have anything. And others, they were living in poverty for years, and they've been homeless for years, and finally they came to a shelter. But that's our main services, are 2 shelters and the temporary housing. But the program I work for, Housing for Health, is about permanent housing. We try and help people get the Section 8 vouchers and help them find their own apartment. And that's the main goal. But we also want to help people improve their health, make sure they have a doctor that they see, and also a therapist or a psychiatrist. If that's what they need, mental health services, we try and connect them to all of these services. And that's why it's called Housing for Health, because we believe once someone is in the housing, they can more easily get all the other services they need. Because if they're sleeping in a tent on the street, that might be hard to keep a job, to keep going to the doctor, to keep going to the therapist when you don't have your own stable place to live. Maybe you're leaving a tent and then all your stuff is going to get stolen, and that's what you have to worry about. So it is better in the shelter because at least you have, your own room. And that's why Good Shepherd Center, our shelters are a little bit, I would say, nicer than what other shelters are, because some shelters are a warehouse and there's a lot of bunk beds. It's very crowded. There's a lot of fighting. So at Good Shepherd Center, the difference is we have the women, they get their own room. They share the bathrooms and they get 3 meals a day, but they do get their own room. And that's a big difference than other homeless shelters in Los Angeles, where a lot of them, they just put as many people as possible in the same place. And that can be a dangerous environment with a lot of fighting. And that's why part of the reason why people don't feel safe in the shelters and then they choose to stay on the street. That's some of the reason, I would say. It's a very complicated issue. There's a lot of reasons why people are living on the street. It has to do with the policy too, because we are liberal and we allow that in the sense of we don't tell people we don't arrest them for sleeping in a tent. So each city is a little bit different. In New York, you won't see very many people on the street homeless. It gets very cold in the winter, but even in the summertime, I think it's not the same like it is here. So some of our politics plays a part. But a little bit more about Good Shepherd Center. The services are free of charge. Each of the women at the shelters gets 3 meals. At the transitional residence, it's a 1-bedroom apartment. So the women, they can cook themselves. They have their own bathroom, kitchen. So that's more of a apartment style living where they can stay up to 1 year. And the shelters are more short term, 3 months or 6 months. So it's a little different. Our transitional housing, the women pay 30% of their income for the cost of rent. So it is considered affordable because we like to say if it's 30% of your income, that's where you're not supposed to spend really more than 40, 50% of your income for housing. That's a big thing we see in Los Angeles. People are not getting paid very well and they spend more than one paycheck on their housing, more than half of their income. So that's also contributes to homelessness is the high housing costs and the lack of affordable housing for people that are only getting paid minimum wage. Maybe they're working 2, 3 jobs, but they still struggle to pay their rent, to get food. So our transitional residents, it's 30% of their income. It's not a shelter for domestic violence victims or survivors, but we do have a lot of clients. A lot of women have experienced domestic violence. So our location is not confidential. So it's open to women experiencing homelessness, but a lot of the women that are experiencing homelessness, it may be due to domestic violence. That's one of the main causes, as we'll go over. So some of the factors contributing to homelessness, domestic violence, like Jonglin said, that's a big contributing factor because a lot of times women, they're relying on their partner financially, and if there is fighting, it's very hard for them to leave the situation. But when they do decide to leave the violent relationship, maybe they don't have any resources, any money to help them get an apartment on their own. Maybe they don't have family that they can go to. That can be very difficult. So that is how some women with children ends up homeless and they come to our transitional residence or they go to other homeless shelters. Another cause is substance use. We see a lot of people that are on the street. They have a combination of mental health diagnosis and substance use disorder. So that's something, if you're only getting a certain amount of money and you're spending it all, of course, on substances because you're addicted, that's a public health concern. And we should be helping people get treatment, I believe. We shouldn't really be, I would say, punishing them, throwing them in prison, but we need to get them help. And that's what we see on the streets. A lot of people are using a lot of drugs and there isn't really any type of enforcement. It's more like open air drug market, especially in Skid Row in downtown LA. That's where it's notoriously, there is a lot of people struggling with substance use and there's a lot of drugs. We see that in our shelters also. There is sometimes issues with women bringing the drugs into the shelter, and then we have to enforce a policy where we can't have that in our shelter because if someone is there trying to stay sober, it's not going to be a comfortable living environment. Another cause is the lack of family support. A lot of people, they don't have anyone that they can call where they can stay with them temporarily if they lose their job and then they don't have enough money to pay their rent and they have to leave their apartment. Sometimes you can stay with a family member, but some people all of their family members, maybe they are living in poverty, they live in an apartment. And a lot of apartments, they don't allow you to have people living there with you. So if you risk it, the landlord or the owner finds out, then your family members can get in trouble. They can lose their own housing. So these are some of the issues that come up. It's a lot easier if you know people that have maybe their own house, and then they can let you stay with them if they choose to do that. But also, the lack of family support can be due to people fighting with their family members, and then they burn a bridge. They can't get along, and then they have no one to call. They don't have close friends. So the lack of social support can contribute to homelessness because there's no one that can help you when you really need help. And then you go to a homeless shelter, or maybe you sleep in your car, you sleep on the street. That's what we see a lot of, because Southern California, the weather is so nice, you really can sleep outside. You're not gonna freeze to death. So we see that in homelessness on the street. Another cause is the high cost of living in Los Angeles. I think only San Francisco and New York City are higher than Los Angeles in terms of the cost of rent, or housing in general is very expensive. So if someone is only getting paid a minimum wage for their work, how many jobs do they need to work at that rate to have housing? And then if they have kids, it's going to be even more difficult because of the expenses for the children. So there is a lack of affordable housing. There is some apartments that are rent control where they can keep the prices low, but not everyone has that. So we do see people struggle to find a place to live or that they can afford, and that's why they pay more than half of their income for the price of rent. And then if they're doing that, they're always living check to check, and they don't have enough money for food, clothing, other essentials. Maybe they're always very tight. They always have a tight budget. So that's not easy, and that's one of the causes as well. One of the reasons that we know domestic violence is the issue is when we do our surveys, the women tell us that this is how they became homeless, is there was a major relationship that broke down, and they didn't have anywhere else to go once they left the relationship. So they didn't have their own financial resources, they didn't have family. And that's one of the main causes of homelessness for women specifically. We see in our surveys that we've done, when we do intakes, we understand the issue better. Sometimes the domestic violence, it causes people to get kicked out of their apartment because of the fighting. If there's a lot of fighting back and forth, the landlord can say, well, this is not good for our building. You're disrupting, disturbing the peace. We've seen that happen where someone can lose their housing because maybe they're a victim of domestic violence. And that's really unfortunate because it's not their fault, but it's very difficult to leave the relationship. We always think, oh, you can just go be on your own, or just leave the abuser. But we see that people come back to their abuser because there is an emotional bond there. And it's very difficult, even though on the outside we think, why don't you just leave the situation? Some people don't have anywhere else to go, and they love the person, but they're stuck in a cycle of violence. And maybe that's what they grew up with, like what John Ling was saying. So they do come back to the abuser. We noticed that trend with domestic violence. But there is some housing resources for people that are in domestic violence relationships. So there are some protections like the VAWA, Violence Against Women Act. But we always need more protections and more policies and laws that can help with this issue, because we see it's very common. I think one in four, right, from the statistics, or 1 in 3. Either way, it's happening more than we think, more than we talk about. I want to just talk a little bit about my program, Housing for Health. It's different than the shelters, the homeless shelters where I work, because our program, we go throughout LA County and help people find an apartment with a Section 8 voucher. So they're able to get a housing subsidy from the Section 8 voucher, and then the government pays for their rent. They only pay 30% of their income, which is good. So that's not so high where they are spending too much. And we help them find housing all the way from Palmdale, Lancaster, Long Beach, Pomona, anywhere in LA County, not in Orange County or not in San Bernardino or Ventura. But if it's in LA County, we drive a lot to help our clients. We meet them. We do home visits after they get housing, because that's something we notice is after they get housing, sometimes they lose the housing. They go back to homelessness, or they have to move to another apartment because they broke some of the rules at their housing. A lot of times we see that our clients struggle with living alone, with a lack of social connection. So they will move someone in the apartment that's a friend, maybe it's their partner, but it's not a person that's on the lease. So they're breaking the lease agreement by moving someone in, or maybe they'll have 2 dogs or pets that they are not supposed to live with, but they feel lonely. And that's one of the issues I want to talk about, the loneliness epidemic, like this slide says. It's from a book called Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. This is one of the books that our director gave us to read. But it talks about, it's very common to see loneliness. The quote says, "During my years caring for patients, the most common pathology I saw was not heart disease or diabetes. It was loneliness. The elderly man who came to our hospital every few weeks seeking relief from chronic pain was also looking for human connection. He was lonely. The middle-aged woman battling advanced HIV who had no one to call to inform that she was sick. She was lonely too." This is something that I see with our clients. Once they get off the street into the homeless shelter, after the shelter, they get their own housing, their own apartment, but they're there by themselves a lot of times, and they don't have anyone else in their life. No positive connections. Maybe they have unhealthy relationships. Maybe then, because they're lonely, they use drugs in the apartment. They want to escape the pain, and they want to feel better. Maybe they're depressed, and so they want to use a substance, or they isolate. We see a lot of overlap. When people are lonely, it's bad for our society because people don't live as long, they're not as productive. And it's very difficult because it's hard for me. I can help people maintain housing, but it's hard for me to help them make new friends or good connections when they only have unhealthy relationships, because some people are not ready to leave the unhealthy relationship, and they don't want to be alone. That's something all of us experience. I think this issue, loneliness, it's all of us. We face it, especially during the COVID pandemic. It was even more difficult because of the isolation. So we had one client that she had a long history of depression, and this client committed suicide, and that was very sad for us because it doesn't happen like that very often. That's our only client that passed away from suicide. So, but she had a lot of a long mental health history and substance use also, and that leads to a lot of the negative outcomes. But it is a tough situation to solve, because it's easier to help people get housing in a sense. You can help them get into their own place, but once they get the housing, then there's all these other problems that happen, maybe behind closed doors. We don't see them on the street, in the tent, homeless, but they're still facing a lot of demons. So we see here living with air pollution increases your odds of dying by 5%, living with obesity 20%, drinking 30%, and living with loneliness, it increases our odds of dying early by 45%. This is from the same book, a quote. And some research has been done showing that it is very deadly if you don't have any social support. And that's something we don't talk about as much. We talk more about the drugs or alcohol or eating bad food, not exercising, but this is something, as we can see, that is also very deadly. And it's something that we're working on. We're trying to have more events, workshops to help people connect with others rather than being in unhealthy relationships and staying with someone else that's an abuser, maybe because you don't want to be on your own. We're trying to help people get into more healthy relationships, help them understand what is healthy, what is not right when you're dating or when you're with someone. Just helping them be aware of some behaviors that can lead to healthy relationships. One of our success stories, we had 3 clients from a domestic violence shelter named Sojourn, which they're been around a while, but they were referred to us for permanent housing. And they were all 3 of them staying at the same shelter. And we were able to help all 3 of them get the Section 8 voucher. And so the government could pay their rent. And they were able to find their own housing and move into their own apartments. And this whole time they had the restraining order because they were fleeing from the abuser, but they were able to leave their abuser, that was a big step for them to take. And they eventually found their own apartment. And that was a big success for them because the shelter was very crowded and there was a lot of fighting. So now that they have their own space, it's a lot better and they can look for a job. One of them is going back to school right now. The other 2, they're looking for a job. And then eventually, maybe one day they don't have to use the Section 8 voucher. Maybe they will find a job and they can pay for the rent on their own. They will be able to be completely self-sufficient. If that's the case, maybe that will happen, maybe not, but that's their goal, is eventually to find independence, to be more independent financially. And then they all have kids, so they want to see their kids do well also. But it's a success story. 2 of the 3 women, they became friends when they were at the shelter, and now they live pretty close to each other in their own apartment, and they still talk to each other. And that's a more positive relationship than the domestic violence relationship they were in. They left that relationship. From what I see, there's no longer domestic violence, and they are in their own house, so they're no longer at the shelter. So they feel more comfortable all around. And that's the case for many of the clients we serve. We have 95% that found housing and they stay in housing. So only 5% they lose their housing and they go back to homelessness. So it's a good success rate, but we're always trying to do better and find new ways to help people. And that's it. I'll unshare now.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Alex, for the wonderful speech. That was very, very good. Thank you. 谢谢 Alex 精彩的演讲哈。那我们听了 Alex 的演讲以后呢，我们对 Good Shepherd Center 跟 Homelessness 呢，就比较有更多的这个了解。好，那现在是我们第3位讲员是 Emily Wu Chuang，她的中文名叫做吴怡萱。Emily 的父母都是来自台湾。那 Emily 会说中文和一些台语。她多年来在社区及学校呢推广心理健康的议题。Emily 得过很多的奖。像2015年呢，以前的这个参议 员 Ed Hernandez 呢，他给他一个 Woman of Achievement Award 啊。那2018年呢，以前的这个众议员Ed Chow，他给他一个 Make a Difference Award。所以今天呢 ，Emily 的讲题呢是代沟和亲子沟通，他会以他个人的经历来和大家分享，以此来激励大家，从而帮助每个人找到自己人生的意义。现在我们就请 Emily Wu 窗上场。
哦，你听到我吗？
听到，
听到，好，谢谢你们请我来这里讲话，我真欢喜，yeah，so，我今天要I'm gonna talk about my story. I'm gonna talk about the emotional struggles that I dealt with growing up, and then I'll talk about my coping skills. And then I'll share about how I think that healthier communication can help to have healthier or happier families. So, all right. So I am the youngest of three in my family. And I have an older brother, I have an older sister. And my parents, they are the oldest of siblings in their family. And so they are, and they both went to Taida, right? So that is considered like the Harvard of Taiwan, right? But I was born in Arkansas. Arkansas is very different from California. Here in Southern California. In Arkansas, we were one of 3 Asian families in our town of Black and white people. And so the nice thing though back then was that as a kid, everyone was colorblind. So I had many good memories of Arkansas. And I really didn't want to leave. And so, has anyone watched the movie Inside Out by Disney? That movie, if you haven't watched it before, is about a little girl whose parents decide, okay, well, our family is going to move to a different place. And so her heart, like she left her heart in the old place where she used to live. And so the culture from Arkansas to California was so different. Having to move to the San Gabriel Valley, where everybody's Asian, oh my God, I have to compete against all of them. Like, that's a lot of academic pressure, right? Because all of the Asian parents want their kids to be the top of their class, right? Just like when they were growing up, I know. And so, and it doesn't help when Asian parents or just any parent compares their kid to another kid. Like, oh, why can't you be like them, right? And I'm like, okay, are you trying to say you rather they be your kid? You don't want me to be your kid? So I think even though parents mean well, 因为后心，但是 sometimes they don't realize what they say can hurt their kids' feelings. And it took me a very long time to realize this. And it was also very hard to share how I really feel because, you know, like, okay, traditional Asian culture, kids, the way they honor their parents is, right? You have to respect them by obeying them. You don't talk back. And so I didn't know how to show my anger when I was growing up. 我拢点点，我唔知要安怎讲出来，我的想法，my feelings, and so I just hold it in, and so, but when I start to speak out how I really feel, 我妈妈有以前讲，我会听我妈妈爸爸的话，莫听恁的话，不公平。And so it's I understand it's like not fair because the culture changes. Well, we're not in Asia anymore. We're here in the US, right? We also are exposed to Western culture where respect means something different. You can have an opinion, but it can mean that I can respect you have a different opinion without arguing with you. Like just to agree to disagree. And that's something that is kind of difficult to have sometimes in a traditional Asian family. It's not that I'm trying to talk back. I'm just trying to share how I feel. I went to a parenting class just to, like, most of the time if a parent gets in trouble with the court or something, I just participate just to learn what are these parenting classes teaching these parents. And I really like what the instructor had shared. She said that in her own experience, her daughter said, she said to her daughter, "Why are you talking back?" And her daughter says, "I'm advocating for myself." Wow. Advocate? Wow. So I really liked it when she shared that story because I've never learned how to advocate for myself. 因为我拢点点 so quiet, right? Because I'm so scared that my parents will get so mad at me or guilt trip me if I speak out, right? And but eventually I learned to speak out, and sometimes it's hard for my, actually the first I was interviewed by the World Journal Chinese Daily News, and they interviewed me in English, and but they published the article the next day. Me not knowing how to read Chinese very well, like all I could think of was, this article, the awareness is out there. Mental health awareness. Oh, good. It's controversial, but it's good. But later I find out that the article name is actually Victim of Perfectionist Parent Speaks Out. And like my parents were like, you're in the newspaper, right? And they were just so embarrassed. One of my parents' reaction was, "How could you do this to me? Are you really my daughter? Do I have to disown you?" And so it was a really hard time. Like that was like 9 years ago, actually. But I can say that our family is actually healed because, so we had I had a meal with my parents. It was me, my parents, and my husband. No, sorry, I cried. Well, I don't mean to cry. I am crying only because I'm thinking of my daddy. The burial for my daddy was today, so I miss him a lot. But anyways, at this meal I had with my parents and my husband, And I was like crying my eyes out, like, oh, will my parents ever understand me? And then, so my husband speak to my parents, and he said, she's not trying to make you look bad. She's trying to say that she's one of many kids of immigrant families that have struggled in silence for a long time. And she doesn't want other people, other kids of immigrant families to struggle in silence, because the more you isolate, the more... I am a suicide attempt survivor. In college, I wanted to choke myself to death, but I survived those dark moments because I'm here today. And all I want to do, in 2013, same year, I went to an Asian mental health briefing with Congresswoman Judy Chu, Mike Eng, Ed Chow. And after the program was over, they asked, would anyone like to say a few words? And I said, I will not end my life because I have a story to share. The more we talk about mental health, the more we will alleviate the stigma. There is no shame. There is no shame. By the way, Jane, could you mute your camera or your, yeah, I hear a lot of like fuzzy noises. Okay. If you can, I don't know if the moderator is able to do that. But anyway, so back to the meal I had with my parents. So when my husband said, she's not trying to publicly blame you, she's just trying to show that there's a lot of kids out there that are struggling in silence. And so for the first time I had ever heard my mother say, I'm sorry, we're not perfect parents. And that helped me a lot. Because when people have humility to apologize, even say, I'm sorry, that means so much to a kid. Because they can say, I am human. I am not perfect. Because all my life, I think I'm supposed to be perfect. And I'm thinking, if I can't get anything perfect, why should I keep going? Why should I keep living? Everybody's disappointed in me. However, this is the coping skills that I have now. I've actually been part of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, for the last 9 years. And so when I found my family outside my family. I now facilitate support groups for them and classes. And because I know what it feels like to be around people who judge you and think that, what are you talking about? You look fine on the outside. I can't tell anything's wrong with you. Yeah, well, sometimes depression, anxiety, these are like invisible disability. You can't tell from the outside, right? I know sometimes I can be very social, right? I like to, go out, and 打招呼，跟我爸爸、妈妈一起出去外口跟别人讲话。But I've been through my emotional challenges of growing up. I feel like education does not prepare you for life. And so I actually create my own path. And I'm a motivational speaker for mental health awareness. And I think that, you know, doctors try to save lives, but I feel like I'm also trying to save lives too. Because I want every talk I do, I want to show people that I want to pour love into people's hearts and say, you are precious. You are priceless. And never in a million years would I ever want you to take your own life. And you know, when I encourage other people, I'm also encouraging myself. Sometimes when people ask me, hey, Emily, do you get out? My roof. Why? Because I have 3 of my own cats. I have 5 foster cats, and I have my husband, and then I have my inner child. So I have 10 kids under my roof because I have to take care of myself too. Because I have to become like my own big sister or become my own mother. I have to unlearn the things I used to tell myself, because I used to tell myself, you're stupid, you're slow, and you're not worthy. And when I finally realized, hey, those are actually false. That's false. Those are lies. No, Emily, 你就搞啊. You take after your mother. She's so good at event planning. You're good at event planning. 你就搞恭维，跟别人恭维. You know, you're very artistic. Like even today, you know, this morning, I used some this morning. So from my dad's casket, there's like a bunch of flowers, right, that they put on the casket. And instead of throwing it away, this is what I did. So I took off all the rose petals and I made a heart. And there's a picture of Daddy in the middle over there. So I'm very creative, I'm artistic, and I'm learning to be my own best friend. And so I hope that I can help by sharing my story to encourage other people to go find support groups like I did. If that can help you, go, do not isolate, because your life is precious. And, you know, Alex was talking about healthy relationships, and it's so important for us to learn healthy coping skills to help us help ourselves. And that can take time sometimes. One of the first ways is by dismantling the lies you tell yourself. Like, 你咪講哦，我做下文. No. 你唔是下文啦. Everybody, 每个人有他们的 positive, negative, strength, weakness, right? So concentrate on your strengths and think about what you're good at. And that will make you feel good about yourself. And then when you have negative, when you have weakness, use those weaknesses as opportunities to grow and be better. Opportunities to grow. Like recently, I said in a 20-second social media post, I said, good morning, this is Emily Wu Trong speaking. Know that every challenge you go through in your life will is a gift because it will help you grow. It will feel like a mother effer, but you will grow. Sorry, I didn't really mean to curse, but I mean, it's just like sometimes you, like, even the most painful things that happened in your life, even like my dad's death, right? Is I miss him. But this is my daddy's jacket. And so I hug him and I pretend that this is my daddy. So I think that everything we go through in our life, everything is some kind of life lesson. And it's important for us to ask ourselves, what lesson are we learning right now? Go through the emotions. Don't stuff them. Don't stay with the negative emotions for too long, because they will make you too depressed. But take breaks. Know you're human. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to be yourself. You don't have to pretend. I don't like pretending. And I mean, that's, and then the other thing I like to do is I go to support groups. One group I go to is called Recovery International. And some of the coping skills they share are endorse yourself for the effort, not just for the performance. So even though, you know, we live in a world where it's like, oh, you have to get 100% or 120. No. Every effort you make, pat yourself on the back, because it means you are trying. Trying is better than not doing anything. So applaud yourself. Like, I'm really happy that you guys are all here, because domestic violence is a very tough topic to talk about, right? Like, everyone wants to just, it's an elephant in the room, right? Elephant. Elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. But we need to talk about these topics. It may be uncomfortable, but it's going to help. You have to start somewhere, right? And so, for example, okay, so what healthier communication for happier families. 我觉得 actually one of the last conversations I had with my daddy about anger, I said to my daddy, Daddy, if I snap at you, it means there's something in my heart. I'm not feeling good. So if I snap at you, shire, I'm sorry. And then my dad said, yeah, you need to work on your anger. And I said, yes, Daddy, I know. And then with my mother on a different conversation, I say, yeah, Mama, it's just, I'm hurting inside here, and I don't have the control to not, you know. And so if I could control my voice, I would always stay calm, keep my voice calm. So what is sorry lah. So I feel like then they can understand where I'm coming from. And then one time, sometimes like she feel like I was pushy. And she says she's tired. So 我讲吼，妈妈 you can 你会使讲I'm tired. Can we talk about this later? 下次 if you feel this way, can you say that next time? And she said, okay. So I feel that if we can start to try to talk in a calm manner, non-judgmental way, because judgmental way can be like, what对你不对? No. We have to take away 那个想法. You have your opinion, I have my opinion. Let's listen to each other. And if we can do that, okay, maybe like when I was in high school, I learned something called I feel statement. We talk about this in NAMI class too. And so you can say, I feel this, I don't feel good when you did that. It makes me think, are you trying to, like, I don't know. It made me feel not 不爽快. And then if you give the other person, what can you tell me? Why did you do that? Can you share with me your perspective? Why you did that? 我是要知影，我不是要跟你赌啦. And then, so you give the other person a chance to talk. Oh, yeah. Oh, 我是的啦，我不是要跟你挑剔过，要跟你派啦. This is what happened. And then when you can have this kind of dialogue, 我想这是较好的 communication. And it takes a lot of practice, right? It's easier said than, done. But yeah, I think if we could have better communication like this, we can, be better. Jane Lee, did you mean to show your web browser? Or, but anyways, but yeah, this is how I feel about healthy, how we can have better relationships with our family members. And so yeah, but anyways, I think that's about it for me. Thank you so much, NATWA, for inviting me to speak today. I hope I look forward to also being on the mental health panel with Dr. Michifu at the convention next April. So if any of you guys are there, I look forward to meeting you there too. So, all right, Cissy, you can take the floor.
好，谢谢 Emily 讲得太好了Emily 的爸爸刚刚去世没有多久，所以我们很谢谢他特别来参加我们这个 seminar。然后我们也听到一些你个人的一些心路历程对我们大家都有很大的一个帮助，谢谢。好，那接下来呢，就是我们有这个question and answer session， 我们这个问答的时间我们就是说，我们观众如果有什么问题想要问我们3位讲员大家可以提出来或者是就是 可以发言，或者是举手发言这样子。如果说有没有人有什么问题要问我们3位讲员吗？
那个坚利好像他的那个 web browser 是在那个上面呢，坚利，他应该要 close。
Jenny 那边可以 close 吗？
他刚刚好像在 struggling. Yeah, she was struggling. Okay, right now it's fine. Okay. Cissy, 你介绍完了吗？
我介绍完了。
好，真多谢咱今仔日3个演讲者哈。Yeah, thank you for Jolene, Alex, and Emily. Yeah, you're wonderful to share your knowledge to us. And so, and also this in the meeting, the purpose is to, okay. The panel is kind of like jumping, so okay. So we wanted to do some donate. If anybody wanted to do any donation, number one is to the Pacific Asian family. You can issue a check to CPAF. And also the second one is from the Alex Institution. It's Good Shepherd Center. Okay, so you can you have to issue the check separately. Then mail your check to Wayne Jane. Her address is here, and we will transfer the money to the institution. So, and also, okay, for the following questions, we let the Cissy handle it. So anybody has a questions, raise your hand. Su Jane.
Su Jane.
Hi, thank you. I really very touched of the Emily's speech. I think it's very common to happen in different culture. Of we are first generation immigration, and the kids ask you raise up here or grow up here. 我想是很 common 发生的事情，所以我说不是只有父母亲困难，孩子也是困难的。我想这是一直很 long term 的学习。But 刚刚Emily 有一些就是怎么样在什么时候我们要 stop，so become fighting，you know， or 是 for emotion 更不舒服就说 could we talk about that later，you know when is a good time， 或是说我们至少当你刚刚讲了一点很好，就是 What's your perspective？ 那这个就是一个 open end 我真正想听听你刚刚讲的这是什么意思？你想表达的是什么？I think that's better than 我比较会用我的方法，我想解释，但是你这个 culture 这个那个 language sometimes 有 culture 的那个 different， 你怎么解释是没有用的 ，that's in vain， 就变成好像说你在 argue 我是对的 ，you know， this is become more difficulty。我的孩子都是在这边长大的，那他们也跟 Emily 一样会讲 Mandarin 跟 Grandpa、Grandma 都很好。那么他们对我的一些照顾，什么生活的照顾，什么什么的，都很像我在照顾我的 parents。So I just feel very appreciate and really big award to me。但是我们在交通里面常常很多的困难，就是刚刚 Emily 提到的，也是一次一次流列在学习哈。所以说我很 appreciate 刚刚的 speech， 然后继续学习。Thank you. Yeah.
谢谢 Jenny 你的 share 哈 好，那现在
对不起，我补充一下啊，Jane 啊，他 raised two very successful kids. They are doctors. So 所以也很高兴他能够听到他的小孩子很孝顺他哦，这是很不容易的啊。
好，谢谢。好，那下一个是 Julia Huang。
personally very respect all the people work for the
听到声音。
对不起，Julia，你 you have to be close to your microphone. We cannot hear you.
but I did
Julia.
yes I did unmute. I think that's the best she can do at the moment.
She needed her husband. She didn't unmute, so that's why. OK， 那你可以讲了。哎，我们完全不能听到你的话。
How about let her speak and then I'll try to see if I can hear her better.
Can you? Emily, you can hear her better?
A little bit. Let me try. Just let her.
Okay.
Still cannot hear? I can hear you. Just keep going. I want to say is we have visited PCAF in the year of 2017 when I was the president. And we saw all the peoples, they are very sincere and very organized to take care of those family they need help. We donate the clothes, shoes, so the money to the CAF. So I feel this organization is very
那个，对不起，
Yeah,
我
we
们
can't
听
hear
不
you anymore.
那个Jenny 也有问题，我们是不是可以先请 Jenny 来发问，然后等到 Julia fix 她的问题以后，再让她来发问。
好，
呀，我想这样比较好，因为我没有很多时间。
OK，那你说下一个是 Jenny 是吧？
Jenny 对 Jenny 已经举手举很久了。
OK，好，那 Jenny 你先讲，Julia 你稍微等一下哈，把那个麦克风 fix 一下。那 Jane 先讲好吗
Jenny，
All right. 我是那个田慧娟哈 Jenny. My name is Jenny, and I want to thank you, Emily, Alex, and Jolene, for today's presentation and also share your own story. It's very touching. And I always admire people who devoted their time, efforts to the social issues. And this is incredible, especially from our second generation of Taiwanese. I have one question for Jolene. I think when you share the story about Mrs. Chen, you know, although it's combined all couple people's their life experience. So when they approach to the priest or pastor at the church, I can imagine maybe the early days when we are not aware of domestic violence, such very serious issues at the time. But now, did the situation improve? In other words, did the pastor or the priest at church, at various church, are more aware of the issue and willing to come forward to help, rather than send them away?
Thank you, Amy, for your question. And the answer is complex, right? Where I think awareness is better than it has been. And pastors are people like everyone else, and we all have different understandings of what is domestic violence, what is our role in confronting violence. So we've had survivors who are connected to CPAF by their pastor. They were the ones who drove the survivor to our office, were instrumental in helping them leave an abusive situation. We have worked with people whose abusive partners were themselves pastors. So this is not any one person. And yeah, there are some a need for further education and outreach within faith-based communities, because again, what did we learn about the role of family and marriage? If you believe that divorce is a sin, then you're probably not going to get divorced, even if your marriage is running into some difficulty, and teaching that nobody deserves to be abused. Right? And so we do rely on our partners in the community, because pastors can hold a lot of influence, right? Teachers are very respected. And so if people are coming forward to say that's not okay, and if we can all speak together and saying this is not okay, you cannot treat your partner like that. We will support somebody in ensuring their safety. And if that means leaving a relationship, if that means holding this person accountable, we're all watching you. So, and this is the role of community, that we as one person, or even us as CPAF, as an agency, we can't do that in the way that all of you who are members of your respective communities can be. And then this is why we all need to keep having these conversations, right? Let's talk about what is domestic violence, how we can all work together to raise awareness and to let people know that there is support, from CPAF, from your church members, from your family members, right? You can talk to people, and it's okay. Like, people are willing to listen and support. And again, there's a level of maybe expertise we have as CPAF because of the number of people we've worked with, and you don't have to be an expert, right? You don't have to be a professional or a licensed clinician to listen to someone, right? To let them know, I believe you, I support you. We don't need to be professionals to do that. Part of our support might include connecting someone to professionals, right? Maybe we can call the hotline together. Would you be okay? Would you feel more comfortable if we did that? Or have you considered talking to a therapist, right? Maybe we can call NAMI together, right? So we can all be a part of somebody's support network. We can share our time and our support, and in Emily was saying earlier, what lesson are we learning, right? When we experience hardship, I would add one more question to that. What lessons are we passing to our children? How are we setting examples of how do we resolve conflict? How do we have conversations with each other? How do we express our feelings and talk about these really hard to talk about problems? If in many immigrant families, we grew up being told by parents, don't date, right? You don't have time for a boyfriend, just focus on your studies, right? And so it was just no dating, no boys. And if I already know I'm not supposed to date growing up, and I am seeing somebody, and now I'm worried that my partner's getting a little pushy, right? I know I can't talk to my parents because they already told me I'm not supposed to be dating. So how are we having conversations? How are we making sure it's okay to talk about these things, right? You can talk to me and we will figure it out together, right? How do we praise children, right? 乖孩子. What does 乖 mean? Right? Means good, means obedient, right? 乖 means quiet. Right? We praise children for being quiet, for not causing a fuss. And if there is something bothering you, if your mental health is suffering, if you are in a household where you're feeling unsafe, you can raise a fuss, right? That is okay. And there are people who are willing to listen And we can come together as a community to support people. And that's not making a fuss, that is setting our boundaries, and that's making sure that we and the people we care about are safe.
Julie, I really like what you're talking. Alex, I do like what you talked about too, because it's just like, you know, as a kid, I actually would have liked to run away, right? Because it's just when you don't feel like your parents understand you, you know, it's like you want to run away, but then it's like, you know, you can't because it's like, where are you going to live? You know, like, I don't want to be homeless. So it's like, then I have to deal with it. Like, I have to deal with living at home and just, you know, and it's just, but sometimes kids don't have the words to be able to express themselves, and they don't have the language, right? And then it doesn't help that school doesn't always teach all that stuff either. There's no mental health awareness campaigns when we were growing up, right? Like, and so it's like we have to be the change makers. We have to be the cycle breakers. If you see that there was something wrong or something not a good habit that was passed down to you, like if you felt like when you were a kid and your parents didn't listen to you, well, maybe this is where you can start being the change, and you can listen to your own kids and hear how they feel. And like, because sometimes I you know, just because it was that way and the way you grew up, and it's not, wait, I'm not trying to put any blame, because actually this is intergenerational trauma. It's passed down from generation to generation. And in order for each one of us to be born, this is epigenetics. There needs to be like over 1,034 people for each one of us to be born, like this over the last 400 years, right? Habits get passed down from generation to generation. And when somebody wakes up, that's when we can break the cycle. This stops with me, right? And so there's this recent post I saw online, and it says, feeling happy, show the kids. Sad and crying, show the kids. Mad, show the kids. All the other emotions, show the kids. Children don't need lessons on how to internalize their emotions. They need to see us handling them in healthy ways and modeling authenticity. So to be real, show that you can be human and that it's okay to be human. So that's what I do now. Like, and it's very freeing. Like, so anyways, thank you, Zhongling. Thank you, Alex. Yeah. Cissy, we can't hear you.
Cissy, you need to
还
unmute.
有没有什么人有问题的？Julia，你现在可以，你的麦克风可以讲了吗？
Unmute.
You need to unmute.
我现在讲，你们听得见吗？
稍微好一点。嘿，
这是电脑啊，离得比较远，所以
还是听不见。我知道，看 output。
Can Emily translate for us?
Yeah, sure.
现在要简单讲的就是说，我们呢在2017年曾经 visit 去参观这个 CPAF， 我们呢亲眼看到，就是这个组织呢，他们照顾这个亚洲人的这个受家暴的家庭是非常仔细、非常严格，我们也不能够随便参观，但不能够跟他们说话啊，所以就是很隐私，非常，所以他们做得非常好。除了懂呢，我们有时候就说，对我们这个亚洲人呢，这个受家暴的家庭，我们不太清楚。
Julia，
就这样，非常感谢
哦
三个
，OK，
人都讲得很好，
啊
非常感谢，谢谢。
Okay, so she was saying that there was some kind of program. Okay, my Mandarin is not so great, but I think Julia.
I heard enough
Oh, okay,
to respond directly. Yeah.
Okay, good,
Thank you
good.
very much. 也谢谢 Julia 是 yeah, thank you very much for your kind words. You know, and we do occasionally have people coming to visit CPAF. The community shelter is public, and we also have the shelters, which are confidential locations. And we want to be mindful of the confidentiality for the safety and privacy of everyone who's residing there. You know, and we have some amazing dedicated teams that are based at all of our shelters supporting the families who live there. And again, we cannot do this alone. So we have one emergency shelter that has about 13 rooms, 2 locations of transitional shelters that can house about 6 or 7 families. Emergency shelter has been about 2 to 3 months, sometimes up to about 6 months is our maximum as an emergency program, and our transitional shelters are 10 to 12 months programs. So given the number of people coming through, not everyone in our emergency shelter may have a spot in our transitional shelter. Right? The rate of families moving in and out is like there aren't enough shelter beds within CPAF internally. And you know, we've also had some shelter clients who will relocate to Good Shepherd shelter. You know, we have worked with Little Tokyo Service Center. We've worked with other agencies that also manage shelter and housing programs because we don't have a direct connection to permanent housing. You know, we have our shelter programs during this time. We do our best to support everyone who's working towards greater financial stability, working towards permanent housing. And we also rely on partners in the community, people who have a lot of expertise in the different services that are out there, financial, like rental assistance, for people to become more established in permanent housing. So, you know, represented here, you have many agencies that have different scopes, right, in our programs, in our expertise, and in supporting survivors. For somebody who has experienced domestic violence, part of the abuse may have been the isolation and the financial control. And they have to go through a lot of legal process before their immigration status is resolved, because that was also part of the abuse. And before they are able to work, you know, legally, they need to have certain authorizations, certain visas in place first. They have to apply for certain immigrant legal remedies for survivors of violence. And so there can be a very long process, and it takes everyone. You know, trauma is a reason that many people experience further mental health issues. Domestic violence is a reason many, particularly for women and families, fall into homelessness in the first place. And so when somebody asks, how can we help survivors of domestic violence? It's a very broad question because the types of help can include everything: housing, mental health, financial assistance, employment assistance, job training. You know, it's a little bit of everything. And so, you know, the 3 of us here today are sharing bits and pieces of what we do. And it really, these are parts of the same whole of how we can all work with the community in support of survivors, because it really does take everyone.
Thank you, Jonglin. It's almost come to the end. So I guess I have just one final question to Alex, you know. So Alex, maybe can you tell us what people can do to help these homeless women and children? You know, maybe just give us some brief idea and, you know, in a few sentences, maybe if you can give us some ideas.
You can volunteer your time if you want to work with some of the population. They have serving meals, some shelters. Of course, you can donate money. Fundraising is very important for the nonprofits because we rely on a lot of the government grants and we don't always get the freedom to use the money the way we need it. So the private funding is much more flexible, and that's from private donors. You can spread the message, spread awareness, I think, about this is the causes of homelessness, and it's not so simple as people maybe think it is, because sometimes people are very upset and they don't understand what's happening, and they get angry, and then they look down on people that are experiencing homelessness. So I think it's better to spread the message that sometimes people, they just need a chance to get back on their feet, maybe to get a job and then an apartment, and then or even go into a shelter. Maybe that's what their next step needs to be, but they just need more understanding, like non-judgmental listening, like what Emily talked about, is important. So I think those are some good steps.
Okay, thanks so much, Alex. So I think our seminar comes to the end now, and then Lisa, do you need to talk about?
Yes, we need to take a photos of everyone if it's possible. So everyone, can we turn on your video? So hopefully I can photo and put it in our report. Okay, Belle, Jane Lee, Emily, Jane Lee open, Loretta, Sharon Huang, Sharon, Cho Ming， 哎，那个慧娜呢？她可能先走了。
我也看，我也看他，
这里，
他在这里，
我看到，
我看
有啦有啦，就碎掉哈，无看，是的是的。
今天
OK，
特别报
好
告一下，我们的副会长陈慧忠也在这里，从那个温哥华。
啊，欢迎欢迎，谢谢你，Yeah，OK，还有那个金丽，你可以上 video 吗 ？Emily, Chouman, Sharon Huang. Okay, I think that's the best we can do. Okay, everybody smile. Cheese. Okay, thank you.
谢谢大家，谢谢大家来参加。
Yeah. 还有就是不要忘记 donation. Don't forget the donation for Center for the Pacific Asian Family. Yeah, they really need funding to support their program. Same thing as the Good Shepherd Center. If you want to, just send your check, issue your check to their name, CPAF, and then the other one is Good Shepherd Center, and send it to Atisha address for Wayne Jane. 你要不要举手？
大家可以看一下 chat room， 我已经把它放进去了。
Okay, great.
地址，然后还有就是不要写给NATWA。
Okay, yeah, don't issue your check to NATWA. Issue the check to the two centers' name and send it to Wenjing, and we will forward the check to you guys. Thank you very much for your efforts, and we learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, quick question. So when will the recording of this seminar be available?
It should be next week.
Oh, good. All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, you can go on to NATWA online, natwa.com, and view it. We're gonna upload it there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, Cissy, are you still there?
Can you
Yeah,
can you
I'm
show
here.
the donation check sent to the address? Can I?
chat room 里面有看到吗？
Oh,
No,
already
没看
disappeared.
到。
Yeah, 没有了。
Yeah, disappeared.
Yeah.
啊，disappear 了。等一下，
这个住址要不要再秀一次？
Yeah, address again, please.
Unless
Oh.
you put it in the chat box.
哦，我放在 chat box 里面，我现在再放一次。
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. 谢谢 Cissy. Thank you for coordinating today.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
coming.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Jolene. Thank you,
Bye.
Cissy.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Yeah. So, oh, Cissy, I wanted to share with you that I think that like who's in charge of, because so I'm more used to using Zoom versus WebEx. And with Zoom, if you're the admin, you can mute people. But for some reason on this platform, it seems like when somebody is noisy and like, making a lot of noise, like you cannot mute them.
I'm sorry. I should keep watching out and unmute because at the beginning I unmute everyone except the presenter and Cissy, and then when somebody opened, I need to re-mute it again.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, I was keeping watch out. Someone opened the microphone, then I'm the one that should.
Oh, okay.
I think
Okay.
they can do it too. Yeah, WebEx probably can do it too, right, Wenjing? Huh?
Yeah, WebEx can mute everyone. I mean, like Zoom, pretty much like Zoom. Just
Yeah.
today, I think there's some problem with that, but I try to mute everyone I could see from the screen.
Okay.
But I think somebody after I muted, they unmute, maybe accidentally unmuted.
Okay, so I think you might have to have multiple admins next time for if you do another virtual seminar again. I'm only sharing this because like I am in charge of like virtual meetings too when I do support
Sorry
groups
about
and classes. So I was just like, okay, I hear all this static, and I'm just like, okay, and then someone's sharing their screen, so I'm like, gosh, and all of this is recorded, so it's just like, yeah, but I mean, this is the perfectionist in me, but it's like I'm just sharing, like I'm just sharing the feedback so that you can improve next time, right? So, right, use it as a learning opportunity. Yeah. So yeah. So anyways,
Thank you, Emily. That was a great speech. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Oh, of course. I forgot to also say that this green ribbon, it stands for mental health awareness. And because everybody, like you guys do the breast cancer awareness walk, like every year or before pandemic, and everybody knows pink is for breast cancer, but nobody knows that lime green is for mental health awareness. And so like I will actually dress up in like all lime green stuff, and this is me, like, so every year NAMI has a fundraiser, and we so sometimes, so when I go, I dress up in green, and I sometimes I wear